You ever hear people say marriage is built on trust? Yeah, well, in my case, it was more like a badly written Netflix drama that everyone saw coming except the guy in the starring role, me. On the surface, I had what you'd call the American suburban dream. A wife who made Pinterest boards about holiday decorations, a best friend who practically lived in my living room eating my Doritos and watching the game with me, and a family portrait so polished it could have been a stock photo. If Norman Rockwell had painted us, people would have hung it in their living rooms and said, "That's what love looks like." What they wouldn't see, what they couldn't see, was the little cracks crawling like spider webs across the glass. Cracks that would one day shatter with the force of betrayal so deep I couldn't even find words for it. But of course, before the explosion comes, the act, the big illusion, the theater of normalcy. And I played my role like a pro. I smiled. I laughed. I handed my wife glasses of wine while she texted someone under the table. Spoiler alert, it wasn't her mother. And I slapped my best friend on the back while he made excuses to leave at midnight, claiming a work thing, even though everyone knew the only work he ever did was perfecting his fantasy football league. I kept pretending not to know, because sometimes silence is more dangerous than confrontation. It was like living in one of those conspiracy documentaries where the narrator whispers about secret societies controlling the world, except my Illuminati was a toxic love triangle brewing right in my kitchen. The signs were so obvious it was practically parody. She started dressing differently. Suddenly, yoga pants and messy buns weren't enough. It was all lipstick, perfume, little black dresses on random Tuesday nights. Who was she trying to impress? The Amazon delivery guy? No, it was the man I'd trusted like a brother. The guy who once borrowed my truck to move his couch and never returned it on time. Looking back, the red flags weren't flags. They were giant inflatable tube men waving outside a car dealership, screaming, "Infidelity sale going on right here." But what did I do? I smiled, like some twisted sitcom husband who knows his wife's cheating but decides to play it off for the laugh track. Deep inside, though, the betrayal burned. You want to know what betrayal tastes like? It tastes like cheap beer at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep, sitting on the porch while your wife claims she's at yoga. It tastes like the rubbery chicken wings your so-called best friend brings over, as if greasy food can cover up the smell of lies. It tastes like swallowing every single question you want to scream, because you just know, that when you expose them, it has to be big, cinematic, unforgettable. That's how revenge works. Not with a whisper, but with fireworks. The most ironic part, my family thought we were fine. To them, we were a Hallmark card. They'd say, "You two are perfect together, such a strong family." And I would nod, smile, and pour another glass of wine while thinking, if only you knew this Hallmark card was written in disappearing ink. And yet, some sick part of me enjoyed the game. The pretending gave me power. Imagine being the only person in the room who knows the magician's trick. The rabbit isn't real, the hat has a hole, the wand is fake, but everyone else is clapping. That was me. And maybe it was twisted, maybe it was toxic, but I felt like if I stayed silent long enough, I could control the ending of this story. Not them. Me. American culture loves the idea of the strong, silent type, the cowboy who says nothing until the final shootout. Well, I wasn't wearing boots, but I had the silence down. Every time my best friend laughed too hard at my wife's jokes, I cataloged it. Every time she lingered too long on his Instagram posts, I logged it. Every fake smile, every excuse, every late night out with the girls, all written down in the invisible book of betrayal I carried in my head. And trust me when I tell you that book was thick enough to rival the Bible. The Gospel of Cheating. Chapter 1, Thou shalt not screw thy best friend's wife. Except apparently they missed that sermon. And so the stage was set. The audience, family, friends, neighbors, still thought they were watching a feel-good American sitcom about love and togetherness. But me? I knew we were one episode away from flipping genres into full-blown tragedy mixed with dark comedy, the kind of episode people talk about for years, saying, "Can you believe he actually did that?" My revenge was marinating, slow-cooked, like Southern BBQ, soaking in betrayal until the flavor was just right. And I kept smiling, because nothing unsettles guilty people more than the man they're betraying refusing to act betrayed. That's the scariest thing. That's the power of silence. And in that silence, I promised myself, when the curtain finally fell, it wouldn't just expose their infidelity, it would end the entire performance. They say every marriage has phases: the honeymoon, the routine, the decline, and finally, the Netflix true crime documentary. I guess we skipped straight to the documentary stage, except I wasn't dead in a river and there wasn't a creepy voiceover saying neighbors said they seemed like the perfect couple. Instead, the betrayal kept unfolding in plain sight, like some reality TV show that nobody but me realized was unscripted. And the longer I played along, the more ridiculous it became. Imagine living in a house where the walls whispered infidelity and the air smelled faintly of Axe body spray that didn't belong to you. That was my life. The sitcom laugh track was gone. In its place, a slow drumbeat of revenge getting louder by the day. At first, it was small. She'd smile at her phone more than she smiled at me. A quick glance, a chuckle, thumbs flying faster than a teenager on TikTok. I'd ask, "Who's that?" And she'd say, "Just the girls." Which of course was hilarious because her girls were the type who thought brunch was a workout and wine tasting was cardio. They couldn't string together a group text that lasted longer than 5 minutes without someone misspelling mimosa. But somehow, these girls had suddenly become hilarious at midnight? Sure. And my best friend? He had a new habit of dropping by unannounced, all sweaty from the gym, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. He'd slap me on the back, raid my fridge, and give my wife that smile, the one that said, "We share a joke you don't get." But I got it. Oh, I got it. You want to know how betrayal really feels in an American family setting? It's not always the screaming or the slammed doors. No. Sometimes it's Thanksgiving dinner. There's turkey, mashed potatoes, family gathered around talking politics and football. My wife's carving the turkey like she's Martha Stewart, and my best friend's sitting across the table cracking jokes about my uncle's beer belly. Everyone's laughing, passing cranberry sauce, sipping wine, and all I can think is, these two are carving me up behind the scenes, and I'm the turkey. And still, I smiled, because revenge isn't served hot. Revenge is a slow dish, simmered until it's thick enough to choke on. The mask they wore was good, I'll give them that. If you didn't know better, you'd call it friendship, maybe even family. That's the American script, isn't it? Friends so close they're basically kin. Sleepovers, barbecues, road trips. And for a while, I almost convinced myself I was crazy. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe the conspiracy board in my head, red strings connecting late nights, perfume, missing hours, was just me losing it. But then the little things piled up. She stopped leaving her phone on the counter. He stopped making eye contact when I asked where he'd been. One night she came home smelling like whiskey, claiming she'd been out with coworkers. Except her office Christmas party wasn't until next week. It was like they were daring me to catch them, like infidelity had become their favorite drinking game. But here's the twist. Rather than confront them, I leaned into it. I played the fool so well it became art. Every fake laugh was a brushstroke, every "how was your night?" a splash of color, until I'd painted the perfect picture of the clueless husband. And you know what? It drove them insane. Cheating is easy when you think you're smarter than the person you're betraying. But when the betrayed acts like nothing's wrong, that's when paranoia flips. They started second-guessing, whispering more, checking over their shoulders, wondering if maybe, just maybe, I knew. And I did. I knew everything. My silence was the conspiracy they couldn't crack. Meanwhile, family still praised us. "You two are such a strong couple," my mother said at Christmas, handing us matching pajamas like we were contestants on a game show called Perfect Marriage. My dad gave my best friend a beer and called him son, which was hilarious in a tragic way. If only they knew that the Hallmark family they were toasting was actually a ticking time bomb wrapped in garland. Every hug, every gift, every forced family photo was another log tossed on the fire of betrayal. And I just kept smiling because my revenge needed an audience. What's the point of exposure if nobody's watching? The cracks grew wider. They couldn't resist little slip-ups. A hand brushing against another too long, a look held a second too deep, a story that didn't line up. They thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was cataloging everything. I became the FBI agent of my own marriage, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. My silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Because when you're betrayed by both love and family, the only way out is to flip the script, to turn tragedy into performance, to weaponize the mask until it breaks on stage. And so I waited, sat in the living room while they exchanged glances, played cards with them while they laughed too hard at each other's jokes, hosted Sunday barbecues where neighbors swore we were the happiest trio in the cul-de-sac. And inside me, the storm raged. Betrayal, infidelity, toxic love. They weren't abstract words anymore. They were my daily bread. And with every bite, my appetite for revenge grew stronger. Because if they wanted a secret love story, I'd give them one. But mine would have the bigger twist, the crueler ending, the kind of finale people never forget. And when it came, it wouldn't just break their mask. It would rip the whole theater down. You ever play poker with someone who thinks they're a genius but keeps scratching their ear every time they bluff? That's what living with my wife and best friend felt like. Two amateurs playing the high-stakes game of infidelity, thinking they were pulling off the con of the century, while I sat there with a royal flush hidden in my hand, smiling like the village idiot. Silence became my weapon. Do you know how terrifying silence is? You can scream at a cheater, throw plates, pack a bag, and they'll breathe a sigh of relief because, hey, confrontation means it's all out in the open. But silence makes their skin crawl. It forces them to live in a constant state of paranoia, like actors who forgot their lines and aren't sure if the audience noticed. And I was the audience, the director, and the critic all rolled into one. Nights were the hardest. That's when the ghosts showed up. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning like a hypnotist's wheel, replaying every suspicious smile, every late-night excuse, every laugh that wasn't meant for me. My wife would roll over, phone tucked under her pillow like it was state secrets, whispering, "Good night," with the kind of sweetness you use on a child, not a husband. And I'd whisper back, "Good night," smiling in the dark, wondering if she knew I could smell betrayal on her like perfume. You don't need cameras or spies when you've got intuition. Infidelity has a scent. It's the mix of cheap cologne, too much deodorant, and the faint guilt of someone who thinks showers wash away lies. Spoiler, they don't. My friends started noticing I was quieter. At bar nights, I'd sip my beer, watching them argue about quarterbacks, while my best friend, my Judas in a baseball cap, sat across from me cracking jokes like nothing was wrong. He was good at it, I'll give him that. He played the role of the loyal buddy, the ride-or-die guy who always had my back. But the thing about betrayal is it leaves fingerprints, and his were all over my life. Every unexplained absence, every too long glance at my wife, every inside joke they shared like kids whispering in class. It was all evidence. I didn't need a smoking gun. I had an entire arsenal. What's funny, if you can call it that, is how American culture loves to glamorize cheating. Just look at TV dramas. Affairs are painted as passionate, intoxicating, dangerous love stories. But in real life, it's sloppy lies and bad cover stories. It's lipstick smudges, mismatched timelines, work meetings that don't exist. It's not sexy. It's tragic comedy. And yet, in that absurdity, I found power. Because while they thought they were living some grand toxic love story, I was writing the parody version, a satire where the clueless husband wasn't clueless at all. I was the trickster, letting the play unfold until the curtain call. Of course, there were nights I wanted to break. Nights where betrayal felt like acid eating through my chest, where the silence threatened to strangle me. I'd sit on the porch with a beer, staring at the neighbor's American flag, swaying in the breeze, wondering how many families on this street were plastering smiles over infidelity, how many fathers were nodding at backyard barbecues while their wives texted someone else under the table. Maybe betrayal was the real American pastime. Baseball just got better PR. But then I'd remind myself, this wasn't just my tragedy. This was my setup. Revenge wasn't a possibility. It was an inevitability. My family, of course, stayed blind. My mom kept calling my wife such a sweetheart, knitting her Christmas stockings like we were some Norman Rockwell fantasy. My dad invited my best friend to fishing trips, calling him son in that proud fatherly way that made me want to laugh and vomit at the same time. Imagine sitting there while your dad praises the man sleeping with your wife. That's not irony. That's psychological torture dressed up as family bonding. But I let it happen because every compliment, every fake smile, every lie stacked higher made the eventual collapse even sweeter. When the truth came out, the shockwave would be biblical. And I wanted front row seats. The silence turned me into an actor. At cookouts, I'd flip burgers while watching their shadows overlap, pretending not to see. At birthday parties, I'd hand my wife a slice of cake, pretending not to notice her brushing past him just a little too close. At church on Sundays, I'd sit in the pew while the pastor preached about loyalty and marriage, biting my tongue to stop from laughing. The hypocrisy was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And yet I smiled, because every smile was a loaded gun. They thought they were in control, but I was the one pulling the strings. Silent betrayal isn't weakness. It's the sharpening of a blade. And with each passing day, the blade grew sharper, the tension thicker, the play more absurd. They thought they were dancing in secret, but I was the one writing the choreography. And when the music stopped, when the curtain dropped, when the audience gasped, it wouldn't be their love story anymore. It would be my revenge story. And trust me, betrayal may sting, but revenge? Revenge is the cure. Every great American disaster has a single moment when the sirens start blaring. Pearl Harbor had the planes, 9/11 had the towers, and my marriage had a 4th of July barbecue. Funny, isn't it? Betrayal doesn't always show up in shadows and secrets. It sometimes arrives in broad daylight, right in front of the potato salad and fireworks. We'd invited everyone, neighbors, co-workers, family, and of course my best friend, the Judas of suburbia, who walked in wearing a flag t-shirt like he was Uncle Sam himself. My wife, bless her heart, was buzzing around in red, white, and blue like Martha Stewart on steroids. And me? I was manning the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs, smiling at everyone like I hadn't already mapped out the conspiracy of infidelity running under my own roof. But then it happened. The slip. The fatal mistake. Maybe they were too comfortable. Maybe the summer heat fried their brains, but right there, in the middle of my backyard, surrounded by family and neighbors, they shared a look. Not just any look. This wasn't a pass-the-ketchup look or a that joke was funny look. No, this was the kind of look couples give when they've shared too many secrets in the dark. The kind of look that says, You and I know something no one else does. And it lasted too long, long enough for me to catch it, long enough for my stomach to drop, long enough for the little kid next door to ask, "Why's your face red, mister?" Inside, my blood boiled like the grill grease catching fire. Betrayal is bad enough behind closed doors, but out in the open, in front of family, that was war. And still I smiled. I cracked open a beer, toasted my neighbors, and laughed at my uncle's dumb political jokes while silently promising myself this was the last act before the finale. The time for pretending was almost over. All day I cataloged their behavior like a detective with a notebook. The way her hand brushed his arm when she thought no one was looking. The way he refilled her wine glass before anyone else's. The way she leaned in just a little too close when he whispered something in her ear, and she giggled like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. Do you know what it feels like to watch your wife flirt with your best friend 3 feet from your grill while your parents are complimenting your lawn? It feels like being a contestant on a prank show, except the joke isn't funny, and the prize is a front-row ticket to humiliation. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch, fireworks still echoing in the distance, and thought about the absurdity of it all. Here I was, a man who'd given everything to his family, time, love, loyalty, watching it all crumble, because 2 people couldn't keep their hands to themselves. It was almost laughable, like some parody of the American dream. House in the suburbs, best friend always around, wife smiling at church. Oh, and the bonus feature, cheating behind your back while serving potato salad to your neighbors. That's toxic love in its purest form, betrayal wrapped in a picnic blanket. But instead of despair, something else filled me. Clarity. Like a switch flipped, I realized the game was no longer about survival. It was about revenge. The silent betrayal had sharpened me, but this public humiliation lit the fuse. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to expose them. And not quietly, not in whispers behind closed doors, but loudly, dramatically, in a way that would leave scorch marks. Infidelity thrives in secrecy, so I was going to drag it into the spotlight and watch it burn. I began planning. You ever notice how American culture loves a grand reveal? Whether it's reality TV, courtroom dramas, or political scandals. People live for the moment the mask is ripped off, and I was going to give them a performance worth remembering. My family thought we were picture perfect. I'd let them see the picture explode. My neighbors thought we were the ideal couple. I'd let them witness the real script. My wife thought she could hide toxic love behind PTA meetings and yoga classes. I'd show her what exposure feels like when it's not private but public, unforgettable, seared into memory like a bad tattoo. The best part? They had no idea. My wife kissed me goodnight, her lips tasting like wine and lies, while my best friend texted me about the great party, man. And I just smiled, nodding, thanking them, while inside my head, I was already staging the final act. Revenge isn't just about payback. It's about artistry. Anyone can shout, anyone can throw a punch, but true revenge, that's theater. And my betrayal-fueled masterpiece was nearly ready for its premiere. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about how betrayal turns ordinary people into villains or survivors. My wife and best friend had chosen villainy, cheating, lying, destroying family trust. I chose survival, but survival alone wasn't enough. I needed justice, not the courtroom kind, but the kind that echoes at barbecues, church pews, and dinner tables for years to come. The kind people whisper about when they say, "Remember when he exposed them?" The kind that etches itself into suburban legend. So I smiled into the dark, knowing their time was almost up. The cracks in the mask weren't cracks anymore. They were gaping holes. And when the whole thing collapsed, when their love affair turned into public shame, when family and friends saw the truth, I'd be standing there, not as the betrayed husband, but as the man who turned betrayal into revenge. And trust me, I wasn't planning to whisper. I was planning to scream. There's a moment before every great performance when the audience goes quiet, waiting for the curtain to rise. That's how it felt the night I decided to expose them. No more pretending, no more smiling through clenched teeth. The script had been written, rehearsed in my head 100 times. And now, it was showtime. I set the stage at the one place they never expected. Our family dinner. Americans love their family gatherings. The long table, the clinking glasses, the roast in the oven, the illusion of togetherness. It's sacred, untouchable, the last place anyone expects betrayal to crash through the door, which made it the perfect theater for revenge. I invited everyone, my parents, her parents, cousins, neighbors, even my best friend, of course. He showed up carrying a bottle of wine, grinning like Judas on Easter Sunday, slapping me on the back like nothing was wrong. My wife floated around the kitchen in an apron, humming, setting the table like Martha Stewart. The stage lights were bright, the actors in position. And me? I was calm, smiling, pouring drinks like the world's most gracious host. Nobody knew they were about to witness the grand finale of a toxic love story disguised as domestic bliss. Dinner started like any other. Chatter about politics, football, the weather. My dad made a bad joke. My mother laughed too loud. The cousins argued about college. My wife placed her hand on my shoulder when she passed the bread, giving me the same fake affection she always did. My best friend raised his glass to me and said, "To family." And that was the moment. That was the exact line I'd been waiting for. The irony was too rich, too perfect. I let the silence stretch for a second, let the words hang in the air like smoke. Then I smiled, and I detonated. "To family," I repeated, lifting my glass. Funny you say that, because in this family, betrayal is sitting right at the table. The room froze. Forks hovered midair, wine glasses paused halfway to lips. My wife's smile faltered, my best friend's eyes darted to the floor. And I kept going, my voice steady, theatrical. "You see, my best friend here isn't just here for dinner, he's been here for my wife, and not in the innocent neighborly way." Gasps around the table. My mother dropped her fork. My father's face turned red, and still I smiled, savoring every second. I didn't just say it, I laid it out. I pulled out the evidence I'd been collecting like an FBI agent. Screenshots of messages, photos, receipts. I projected them onto the TV screen like a PowerPoint presentation, each slide more damning than the last. Every late-night text, every excuse, every lie, exposed under the bright light of family dinner. My wife's face drained of color, her hands trembling. My best friend stuttered, tried to speak, but the words tangled in his throat. The room was silent except for the sound of betrayal echoing off the walls. It wasn't rage that fueled me. It was clarity. For months I had been silent, letting them live their little toxic love story, letting them think they were clever. But in that moment, I was the director, and this was my show. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It was the entire point. Infidelity thrives in darkness, but under the spotlight, it shrivels. And I made sure that spotlight was blinding. Family, neighbors, everyone saw them for what they were. Not lovers, not partners, but liars, cheaters, betrayers. Two people who destroyed trust for a fling they couldn't even hide properly. My wife tried to speak, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, the oldest cliché in the book. My best friend muttered, "We didn't mean for this to happen." Like that made it better. I laughed, not cruelly, but with the kind of dark humor you find in late-night comics. Not what it looks like? Really? Because it looks exactly like betrayal. It looks exactly like infidelity. It looks exactly like toxic love blowing up in your faces. The audience, our families, sat in stunned silence. The American Dream dinner table had turned into a courtroom, and I was both the prosecutor and the judge. The exposure wasn't just for me, it was for them too. For my parents who believed we were the perfect couple. For her parents who thought their daughter was living the fairy tale. For the neighbors who waved at us from their lawns. They all deserved to see the truth, to know the illusion had been a lie. And when the curtain dropped, when the applause didn't come, when the silence was heavier than thunder, my revenge was complete. My wife sobbed, begging for forgiveness. My best friend couldn't even look at me, his face pale, his body stiff with shame. And I just stood there, calm, steady, smiling like I'd been smiling all along. But this time the smile wasn't fake. It was freedom. Because betrayal may hurt, but exposure heals. Revenge doesn't erase the past, but it rewrites the ending. And my ending was this. I wasn't the fool they thought I was. I was the man who let them dig their own grave, then shone a spotlight on it for everyone to see. When the storm ends, there's silence. Not peace, just silence. The kind that creeps into every corner of the house, heavy and suffocating. That's what the days after the exposure felt like. My wife cried in every room, her apologies bouncing off the walls like bad commercials you can't mute. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "It didn't mean anything." Which was hilarious because you don't destroy a family over something that didn't mean anything. You don't sneak around for months, risk everything, and gamble with betrayal if it's meaningless. No, this wasn't meaningless. It was a toxic love story she thought she could hide, and now the entire family knew. My best friend? He vanished. Packed his gym bag, deleted his social media, and ran like a politician caught in a scandal. That's the thing about men like him. They're brave enough to cheat, but not brave enough to face the fallout. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't even try to spin the narrative. He just disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of shame. His absence was almost worse than his presence. For years he'd been at every barbecue, every game night, every holiday. And now he was a ghost with greasy fingerprints all over my life. The families reacted exactly how you'd expect. My mother wept, not just for me, but for the illusion she'd lost. "I thought you two were perfect," she kept saying, as if perfection ever existed outside of greeting cards. My father was quieter. He just shook his head, muttering, "Son, betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from family." He was right. The affair wasn't just infidelity, it was treason. A violation of loyalty, trust, love, and kinship all at once. Her parents were humiliated. They couldn't look me in the eye. They stammered out apologies, excuses, promises that she didn't mean to hurt you. As if intent mattered, as if the knife cuts less deep if the stabber claims they didn't mean it. Meanwhile, the neighbors whispered. American suburbia thrives on gossip, and my house had become the Super Bowl of betrayal. People slowed their cars when they drove by, craning their necks to see if the betrayed husband was mowing the lawn, if the cheating wife was still around, if the best friend's car would ever pull into the driveway again. At the grocery store, strangers gave me pitying looks, like I was a character in a soap opera they'd been following. And I didn't care. Let them whisper. Let them gossip. I wanted the story to spread. Infidelity hides in shadows, but I had dragged it out into the daylight, and now it was public property. That was my revenge. Their toxic love turned into a suburban legend. And my wife, oh, she begged. She begged with tears, with promises, with desperate bargains. "We can fix this," she said, "for the kids, for the family." She wrote me letters, cooked my favorite meals, tried to kiss me like the last few months hadn't happened. But betrayal doesn't wash out with mashed potatoes and apologies. Infidelity doesn't vanish because you light a candle and say sorry. I looked at her and saw nothing but lies. Every word, every gesture, every memory was poisoned. Family, marriage, love, those words had been burned, and the ashes weren't worth rebuilding. So I told her the truth. "It's over. You killed it. You killed us." Her sobs grew louder, but my voice stayed calm. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns hot, but revenge? Revenge cools you down. It clears the fog. It gives you perspective. And my perspective was this: she didn't deserve forgiveness. She didn't deserve reconciliation. She deserved exactly what she got: exposure, shame, and the cold emptiness of a home she'd ruined. The strange part? Freedom didn't feel like victory. It felt like quiet. The house was emptier, the dinners quieter, the nights longer. But beneath that quiet was something new: clarity. For months I'd lived in silence, in paranoia, in the torture of knowing but not speaking. Now the silence was different. It wasn't the silence of betrayal. It was the silence of freedom. Cold, yes. Lonely, sure. But honest. And honesty, after months of deception, felt like oxygen. Looking back, people asked me if I regretted how I exposed them. If maybe I should have handled it privately, spared the families, avoided the spectacle. And I laughed. Because that's the American way, isn't it? Pretend everything is fine, sweep betrayal under the rug, smile for the Christmas photos. But I wasn't interested in pretending anymore. Infidelity thrives on secrecy. Toxic love grows in silence. And the only way to kill it is exposure. Public, brutal, unforgettable exposure. That was my revenge, and I wouldn't take it back. Not for her tears, not for my best friend's shame, not for the whispers of the neighbors. So here I stand, alone but free, betrayed but unbroken. The husband who smiled through months of lies only to flip the script and turn betrayal into theater. And if you ask me what I feel now, the answer is simple. I feel nothing for her, nothing for him, nothing for the toxic love that destroyed my family. What I feel is this: cold freedom. It doesn't warm you, it doesn't comfort you, but it's real. And after months of lies, real is enough. Because in the end, that's the truth about betrayal and revenge. Betrayal destroys, revenge exposes, and freedom. Freedom leaves you standing in the wreckage, smiling. Not because you won, but because you finally stopped playing the fool.